Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the powerful built-in troubleshooting toolkit of Cisco's Application-Centric Infrastructure, or ACI. You know, if you've ever had to hunt down an issue in an ACI fabric, you know that really getting these tools is absolutely essential to fixing things fast.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to follow a classic top-down diagnostic path. We'll kick things off with a quick overview, then we'll jump into the fabric's health score, learn how to decode faults and events, see how to gather data with statistics, and then we'll wrap up with the really powerful visibility and troubleshooting wizard.
Okay, let's get right into it. To really get good at troubleshooting ACI, you kind of have to rewire your brain a little bit. Now, don't worry, a lot of the traditional network tools you know and love are still there, but ACI brings this whole new layer of what we call abstracted, fabric-aware tools to the table, and these are the real key to understanding what's going on with your applications and policies.
Now, this is what's so cool. You can see these two worlds living side by side. Over on the left, you've got your basics, right? Ping, traceroute, even hopping on the CLI for show commands. But look at the right. This is the evolution. Tools like iPing and iTraceroute, for instance, have a huge advantage. They can test connectivity along all the equal-cost paths in the fabric at once. Your standard traceroute, no way it can do that.
The APIC, that's the Application Policy Infrastructure Controller, gives you this amazing set of tools, and they're all integrated right into the GUI. This isn't just some random collection of utilities. It's a toolkit that was built with a purpose. And what's that purpose? Well, it's to give you deep connected insights into both the physical network, the underlay, and the logical network, the overlay, all from one single pane of glass.
All right, so picture this. An issue gets reported. An application is slow. Users can't connect. In a big, complex fabric, where do you even begin? The answer is always the same. You start with the health score. Think of it as your at-a-glance dashboard, giving you that immediate, high-level gut check on the fabric's overall condition. The concept behind it is actually pretty simple, but it's super powerful. The health of any component in ACI gets a score from 0 to 100. If you see 100, hey, everything's perfect, nothing to see here. But the second a fault pops up, that score starts to drop. And how much it drops depends entirely on how serious that fault is. So this is really important. This score isn't just some random number. It's a carefully calculated, policy-driven metric. It takes all the active faults on what ACI calls a managed object, which is just a fancy term for any configurable thing, like a port, a tenant, or a policy, and all its children, and aggregates them. And here's the really clever part. The score propagates upwards, so a fault on one little switch port will lower the score of the whole switch, which then lowers the score of the pod it's in, and that ultimately dings the score of the entire system. It's just a brilliant way to see the ripple effect of a problem.
And you can look at these scores at different levels. You can start with the biggest picture, the overall system view. This dashboard gives you that 30,000-foot view, rolling up the health of every pod, every tenant, and even the state of the APIC cluster itself.
Okay, so from that high level, let's zoom in a bit to the pod view. A pod is just a logical group of your spine and leaf switches. By checking the health score right here, you can figure out really fast if a problem is stuck in one specific part of your network hardware. It helps you narrow your focus in seconds.
And you can get even more granular and focus on a specific tenant. Now, this is incredibly powerful, especially if you have multiple customers or departments on the same fabric. It lets you see instantly if an issue is just affecting one application or if it's a bigger fabric-wide problem. This contextual view is a massive time saver.
So a low health score is your big flashing sign to start investigating. It tells you what is unhealthy, but it doesn't tell you why. So now we have to drill down from the what to the why by looking at the specific faults and events that are dragging that health score down.
This is the million-dollar question you have to answer. A health score of, say, 75 isn't going to fix itself, is it? You have to dig in and find the underlying fault, or maybe multiple faults that are contributing to that score. And lucky for us, ACI makes it super easy to just click on that health score and pivot right to the list of active faults.
And you got to understand, a fault isn't just a simple on or off switch. It goes through this whole managed life cycle. First, a condition is detected and it enters a soaking period. That's to avoid annoying flapping alerts. If it sticks around, the fault is officially raised, and that's when your health score takes a hit. Once you fix the problem, the condition clears, the score bounces back, and then the fault is retained for a little while so you can look at it later for historical analysis. To help you figure out what to fix first, every single fault is categorized by severity. It ranges all the way from a simple info message up to critical.
And critical means a system or a component is completely out of commission. A critical fault on a line card, for example, is going to have a way bigger impact on that health score than some minor warning about a config mismatch.
When you find a fault you want to look into, you just double-click it, and the Fault Properties window pops up. This thing is your best friend. The General tab gives you the basics, but the real gold is in the Troubleshooting tab. So often it gives you a clear description of what's probably causing the issue, and this is the best part, a recommended action to fix it.
And here's a pro tip. If a problem just suddenly appears out of nowhere, maybe right after a maintenance window, the very first place you should look is the audit log. It gives you a complete, step-by-step record of every change a user made, showing you exactly who changed what and when they did it. It's saved me more times than I can count.
Okay, so health scores and faults are awesome for problems that are happening right now. But what about those really tricky intermittent issues? Or what about performance that's just slowly getting worse over time? For that kind of thing, we need to talk about statistics. These are absolutely essential for spotting trends.
So how do you collect all this data? Well, you do it with these super flexible monitoring policies. You get to decide what you want to monitor. The source, which can be anything from a physical port to a logical endpoint group. You set how often you want to sample the data, and then you pick which properties you want to track, like the rate of drop packets or the average bandwidth being used. This gives you the power to spot trends before they turn into major outages.
And now, we get to what is, I think, the most powerful tool in the entire ACI troubleshooting arsenal, the Visibility and Troubleshooting Wizard. This thing isn't some static report. It is a live, interactive diagnostic session that lets you do a deep dive, contextual investigation between any 2 points in your network. So let's think about a classic frustrating problem. A user is complaining about intermittent packet loss between 2 servers. In a traditional network, you'd be logging into, half a dozen switches, running a ton of different commands, trying to piece all the data together in your head. Well, in ACI, you launch one single targeted session to diagnose that entire path from end to end.
And getting this set up is actually super easy. It's just a 3-step process. First, you pick your session type, like endpoint to endpoint. Second, you define your source and destination. You can use an IP, a MAC, or even a VM name. And third, you set the time window. And this part is critical because it lets you literally go back in time to the exact moment the user said the problem was happening.
Once that session is active, you have this whole suite of diagnostic tools right at your fingertips. You can see the complete traffic path on a topology map. You can see exactly which switch and which counter is dropping packets. You can verify which security contracts are being applied. You can even run a live atomic counter to watch the traffic flow in real time. It is literally like having an X-ray for your network.
And this is where it all comes together. This wizard is the perfect example of that top-down approach we've been talking about. You can start with that broad topology view, see a fault blinking on a switch, click it to see the drop statistics, and then drill down even further to find that one specific filter in a security contract is the root cause of all your problems. It's just an incredibly efficient way to work.
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? The ACI toolkit is incredibly powerful, but you unlock its true potential when you use it in a structured way. Always start high level with the health score to understand the scope of the problem. Use that to guide you to the specific faults, and then for those really deep, complex issues, bring out the big guns like the Visibility Wizard to pinpoint the exact root cause. Following this path will do more than just save you hours of guesswork. It's how you're going to truly master troubleshooting in your ACI fabric.